Hi, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Parenting in a Digital Age. This is a new conversation series we're bringing to you to explore how parenting is evolving in today's digital world, from everyday challenges to global trends, platform responses to policy shifts. I'll be hearing from inspiring voices from around the world who bring in research, lived experience, deep insight into how we can raise resilient, supported, and safe children online. And we couldn't have asked for a more thoughtful or generous first guest than Anne Collier, someone whose work has shaped how many of us think about digital parenting, resilience, and youth agency. And thank you so much for being here. We're excited to begin this journey with you.
It's my pleasure. Good to be with you, Jyoti.
We can, jump right into it. And I've heard you often talk about resilience and vulnerability in children. And I also remember you using a metaphor which was very interesting, orchids and dandelions. And could you share what that means and how should we or how we respond to our children's needs online?
Yes, I learned about this metaphor of orchids and dandelions from the work of a psychiatrist named Thomas Boyce at University of California, San Francisco, a number of years ago. It basically means that children aren't all alike in how their physical and digital environments affect them. Most children are like dandelions. They're resilient when they face challenging content or behavior online or offline. They bounce back from adversity and move on, whereas a smaller proportion of children are like orchids, much more sensitive to their environment. It's harder for them to bounce back, and what helps orchids is routine and steadiness on the part of the adults around them, and they don't like surprises, right? So as parents of these sensitive children know, they're the ones we need to keep more an eye on, right? All children need lots of communication when it comes to their online activities, because what happens online is not as visible in the home as in person. But sensitive children need a little more. So it's important to know that everybody's children are not all equally at risk. And the research also shows that in addition to a child's psychosocial makeup or what's going inside their heads, their environments at home and school predict their online risk or safety as much as their offline risk of harm. And what's going on at school and among peers is just as much the context of what's happening online as the app or the game they're in, right? So that's just something, sort of a basic learning that we've had that has served our work for a long time.
Thanks. And then, so parents have a lot of fears about the online space, the digital space. Me being one of those, there's a lot of things I want to keep protecting the child from, and fear of everything that can go wrong. But do you have some, surprising or counterintuitive findings that parents should hear about?
Well, I think we know both from the scholarship and from common sense for generations that children are curious and have, excuse me, a developmental need to find their place in the world, to do their risk assessment. And as adolescents, push away from parents to make their way as adults. So where does fear come in? Well, because of these developmental needs on kids' part, many children want to get as far away as possible from adults' fears or from fearful adults. And if we tend to hover and restrict a lot, they are really good at finding workarounds. And because the internet makes it easy to go underground with apps, VPNs, sites, and now AI models, we can't possibly be completely aware of what they're doing online. And our being overly fearful can actually have the opposite effect from protecting them. It's not that fear is wrong. It can, definitely help us in genuine emergencies, right? It just needs to be managed for the sake of keeping communication flowing. Um, It might be helpful to know about a University of Toronto study that was published a long time ago about public fear campaigns and what that might have to do with parenting. What is and isn't most effective about communicating fear? The researchers found that in order for fear messages to have any effect, they need to have two characteristics. One is they need to be relevant to the listener, and two, they need to be actionable. If they don't meet those two criteria, they could have the opposite effect of making the listener ignore them or actually do the opposite of what you want them to do. So to be relevant, our messages need to be informed about what they're actually doing online. And again, if we're overly fearful, they're not going to want to tell us, right? And B, actionable means keep it brief, to the point, and doable, like messages about wearing a seatbelt when you get in a car. One message might be don't direct message or chat with anyone as we as a family don't know in person. So there are a couple of things about fear.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Communicating the fear, or how do you actually handle it, especially with the kids, because they will find a way to be online. It's like in our earlier conversations also, I remember you saying we need to have give them more agency than have a more protectionist attitude towards the children online. Um, and in your work, what does digital resilience look like in a child or a teen, and how can a parent help build it, especially in a world where everything's changing? There are new apps that come out every day. There are new platforms for them to log on to and communicate with, socialize with. And
Well, based on all I've learned, resilience is resilience. There isn't a special new digital kind. It really is an ability to bounce back, to not be greatly affected or be able to deal with negative or upsetting content, speech, behavior, and images. The delivery mechanism, an app, a game, streamed video, matters less than the content we're exposed to. I do think we're all being exposed to so much more now, right? That we have to deal with overwhelm, and we need to help our children deal with it too. I think there are two parts to helping our children manage that. One is awareness, helping them be aware of their feelings, to notice when they're upset, when they need to talk with someone they trust, so they know what to do when they feel upset, overwhelmed, stressed out, scared, right? Turn it off, walk away, come to you for help or perspective, or just to talk things out. Those are what scholars call refusal skills. And we need to teach that to our little children. The second one is what this is interesting. This hasn't come out that much in discussions about online safety, but a psychologist in the American East named Marshall Duke calls it sorry, a strong family narrative, cultivating clarity in our children on who and where they come from, who we are as a family, and what matters to us, what we feel is right, such as kindness towards others, and what we feel is wrong as a family, such as cyberbullying or hate speech about other people. Helping our children develop a strong sense of identity around those values that we hold as a family, and supporting that agency while being clear on the rules lovingly, helps them grow their confidence and resilience.
that's right. There is no different. Resilience is really resilience. It's more about communication at home also, not just home. In our schools, we all need to arm them with that kind of a thought process, or ability to cope with change, not just online, in general as well. Um, and then I also want to talk about any myths or narratives you see circulating globally, particularly where you are, or the US, or maybe if you want to talk about Europe, that may not serve parents well in countries like India. Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the myth that many of us are faced with in many countries right now is that banning digital technology, sorry, let me start that one over. I think the myth that we're all facing, many of us in many countries right now, is that banning digital technology and media in homes or through laws will finally, once and for all, somehow make kids safe online. If we can just lock kids out of apps, platforms, and games, or make smartphones illegal for children, kids will be fine, like we were somehow. And as I mentioned earlier, kids are very, very good at finding workarounds to bans and barriers, and they're very good at going underground if they need to or want to. So child online safety is above all three things. It's individual, contextual, and situational. In other words, whether a child's online experiences are positive or negative depends a great deal on the child's own individuality, their family and school contexts, and the situation they're in the moment, how it's affecting them emotionally, socially, etc. The technology they're using is really secondary to that. This should be actually, I think, encouraging for parents because we've always had to bring our children up with these conditions as individuals, even compared to their siblings in a single family. So you, parents, have much more power for good in your child's experience, online or offline, than any law or lawmaker. And this has always been true and is true now in the age of AI. It's also risky to depend too much on laws for that very reason. Laws have much less protective power than the people around a child.
Yes, I think I agree. Banning them from going online or banning the smartphones wouldn't really solve, is not really a solution to the problem because they're very good at going around those bans and going underground, like you said. And as a way to end this conversation today, if you have one gentle reminder or one thing that you would want to leave the parents with, please, something which everyone is watching would take back across geographies, cultures, what would it be?
I think this is universal. As you can tell, I do love metaphors. So here's another one. And that is that of the gardener and the carpenter. This is from a psychologist and grandparent at University of California, Berkeley, Professor Alison Gopnik, who suggested that we parents think of ourselves more as gardeners than carpenters. Our children aren't like chairs we're constructing to certain specifications, right? They never turn out exactly to our specs anyway. So it's better to think of ourselves as gardeners, where the outcome is more humanely open-ended. We know we can't control exactly how our children will turn out, though we tend to want to influence them, and that's completely normal, right? But what's best for them is to create a space, cultivate a space with the conditions that really nourish their growth. And I think that's just as true online as offline. And I think part of that is an honest curiosity about what matters to them, what they love to do, following along with that and asking honest questions and staying informed about what's important to them, whether their activities, whether it's sleep, which is really important, or their activities, their games, their play activities, and their social activities, their exercise, which is also important, and their nutrition. All of those things are about cultivating a good garden for healthy growth.
That's like beautiful, and I will always remember that. And thank you so much for answering my questions so well, and so generously. And thank you so much for your time. Uh, this was just the first edition, and we're looking to have many, many such conversations